and I was running the P&L somehow. I got the goal to do the P&L, so I was managing all the money, all the incentives, and with that, the P&L. But in terms of the aggression in the business and that part, that's what I was doing. Every week we would make decisions how much money we're giving to 60,000 drivers. And like that as a 27-year-old was just amazing to have that much power and money flowing through your hands, like millions of dollars each week that we would distribute to all these drivers to get them to do what we wanted them to do and making it profitable. Then 6 months later, that was just such a crazy, quick, like ride of experiences.
Maybe when you look at founders you work with now and you've witnessed over the years through your investments, what are maybe the signs that someone is performing, sustainably well versus, just running on maybe borrowed time and it's just a question of time that this person's not going to do it for the long run?
Now, just a conversation with one of my clients very recently, and we looked through her schedule again, and it was like, she works way too fucking much. She's super, super strong, but she just works too much. Like, the marginal benefit of kind of working 14 hours or 15 hours a day is negligible. But if you use that 1 hour, or maybe even go down to 13 hours or to 10, 10 would be enough too, but use that time for yourself to do yoga, to do stretches, to exercise, to just meet friends and open up your mind a bit, or go hiking or do something else, most likely yields better business results. Like a guy who's like a fucking backbencher at a football team and makes like $1 million a year. He's like the 17th guy at whatever Bielefeld. He has a way crazier support system holistically in terms of food, in terms of like mental well-being, in terms of whatever it is, than some guy running a $1 billion company. It's ridiculous.
But what's maybe one misconception that outsiders often have about maybe your path, about what you're doing, anything you would like to share?
Yeah, it's not necessary to be crazy successful. You can have a nice life. The happiest people are usually not the richest. And my role model was always my grandpa. It was always billionaires like Bill Gates, whatever, who's like the richest guy in the world. And now it really shifted, and my role model is my grandpa. He died peacefully at age 98. He did his taxes at age 98 in an 80-year-old typewriter himself still, because he's mentally fully there. And then he died half a year later or so with holding his wife's hand just from old age.
We are live. Welcome to Be Well. My guest today is a very special one. It's Cornelius Schmahl, an operator who helped build next day delivery in Thailand for Lazada before Alibaba acquired the company. He scaled Uber across Germany, then Africa, then Russia. He's also backed over 100 companies since then, 9 of which became unicorns. And now he runs his own coaching practice, which is called Scaling Brilliance, where he helps deep tech founders who are serious about going and scaling their companies. Cornelius, welcome to the show. It's amazing having you here with us. And before talking about what you're currently doing and learning more about your story, I'll be wondering, maybe let's bring us back to the very, very early days before Rocket Internet, before Lazada. Who were you back then? What was sort of the plan? And if there even was one plan, maybe share a bit about your background for the audience. That would be incredible.
Yeah. The dark ages. Yes, I grew up in the rich suburbs of Munich, so not that dark ages. But my parents were not very wealthy. My mom comes from a family of public servants, very humble, small apartment in Munich. And my dad comes from a rich industrialist family from Hessen, where you're from, I think.
Exactly.
That went bankrupt horribly. And so he was really broke and very scarred by the experience. He worked his life at Airbus, which led me to get connected to hardware at a pretty early age, luckily. My plan was basically, most of the time was to get laid when I was young, and to be honest, the main plan. When I was 6, I wrote in these friends journals that I want to become a millionaire and a boss, and that actually went somewhat well. But when I was 17, I got really into spirituality, into personal development, and then also at the age of getting laid. But then I ended up studying business administration in Munich, and that standard business administration track Like, you think the only thing you can do is join a consultancy. So I was actually working at Roland Berger, which is a consultancy in Germany, as a working student to then later become a glorious consultant. But after 3 months, I realized I'm going to fucking kill myself if I do that. And then luckily through my picking up women organization that I was very involved in, a guy brought me to Rocket Internet. And that was like a week before my exams and a week before I was supposed to go. I didn't even have a passport yet. So I had to get a passport, write my exams, and then went off to go to Thailand and start working there like a dog, 90 hours a week. Yeah, that was
Amazing.
that was the plan there was. And then from there, everything just escalated in a sense.
Amazing. I'll be wondering before we dive deeper into the details of your story and what you did at your operating roles. You just mentioned your pickup background. Could you maybe share some more words about that, and also your spiritual background, that you already were very spiritual with 17? What was that all about? Was there any moment where you became more spiritual, and what does spirituality mean to you if that's not too personal? I'll be wondering.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't know how that exactly started. Oh yes, I was in a relationship with my first girlfriend when I was 16. And I was in France with my parents, and I somehow found a book about Vipassana meditation. I just started reading the book and then went there and started meditating. But that's kind of all I knew about it at that point. And I did that for a while. And then I broke up with her and found another girl that I was into, and that didn't work out. And with that kind of heartbreak situation, I got into I have to Google how to find women. Like that's a major kind of topic in the life of a 17-year-old. So I Googled and I found a group in Munich of 20 people that are involved in this pickup community. So me very young in Deutsche gehen 9, where you literally have to go from 8 till 11:30 to school. I had a lot of time, so I got very involved in that and built up the community there quite a bit. And that's kind of the story of how I got into this thing.
Okay, wasn't aware of that, but that's quite interesting. And that led you then to Thailand, actually, and to Lazada.
It was also my first brush with fame, actually. I found that I immediately learned the dark side of fame because as we were doing this pickup thing, we were running through the city and basically hitting on women at certain times of the week in like huge groups at some point. Because Munich is not that big of a city. So some people noticed and a journalist noticed, and she followed us around and then asked me for an interview. And me, 18, I'm getting interviewed by Süddeutsche Zeitung, which is what I sold subscriptions to Süddeutsche Zeitung as a main source of income. So that was amazing for me, that coincidence. And she interviewed me, and it was like the biggest article of the year at Süddeutsche Online. It got like 1,800 comments, and they read it in all kind of schools and stuff, including the school of my ex-girlfriend, where I talked a bit of shit on her in the interview. So that was a bit of an embarrassment. And so at that point, everyone in my social circle knew I'm like literally doing this thing to pick up women, it immediately burned 90% of the women in my social circle because it never would touch me, obviously. But there were 10% curious ones, which made my life a lot easier in that sense. But I immediately saw the two-sided sword of fame with that experience. Yeah.
Interesting to hear that. I was not aware of that. It sounds really impressive. But part of the journey, and that brought you later on to Lazada and Thailand. You mentioned it was one of your first times actually abroad, I think, right? Really going far away, and then directly working at Lazada, which is a rocket internet company, if I'm not mistaken. You had also had a classic business background, so I assume that was a business role. Maybe share with us some details about how your time in Thailand shaped you and made you to the person you are today.
Okay. Well, I was still in the middle of studying, so I was in my bachelor's. I was like halfway done with my bachelor's. And the first day, because I've never flown with my parents, they were they didn't have money, so I was never in an airplane with them. So I had no idea of the concept of jet lag, obviously. So I went to Thailand. First evening, some German colleagues took me out. We got smashed. I woke up 5 p.m. the next day due to the jet lag and the party. And then as a punishment, they sent me to the warehouse, which is an hour outside of Bangkok at some shitty highway towards Pattaya. And there we were supposed to build up the logistics operation of a e-commerce retailer. And that kind of punishment turned up to be quite a curse, quite a blessing, because in the office there was a lot of pretty intense, coked up former consultants doing dumb shit, But in the warehouse were some pretty decent people actually. And there was my first like really amazing boss, Chris Taylor. He was former BCG Harvard Business School guy from a family business. And he's the most humble, sweetest, hardest working guy. And he whipped me into shape so fucking hard that he made me from being utterly useless basically into being able to work quite well, because he also forced us to work from 8 a.m. in the morning till like 11 in the evening, 6 days a week. And on Sundays, we did strategy for the next week.
Mm.
And he was doing, you do no daily stand-ups. Like normal companies have weekly meetings. And we didn't have weekly meetings, we had daily stand-ups, but we had daily stand-ups 3 times a day because we worked like 3 5-hour shifts. And he would then sit next to me for an hour and half an hour and check in on my shit and whip me. And so that level of intense coaching set the bar for me very high in terms of understanding, okay, this is how you need to manage people if you want to get them to be really successful and productive, and has really benefited me the whole way since then, because it afterwards, finishing my university while working still full-time there 6 days a week was not even an issue, because it just set the bar for productivity so high, thanks to Chris, that the university afterwards was quite easy. So then I finished my university over the next years remotely.
Interesting. And also pre-COVID, you already finished it remotely. So that says a lot. Interesting, impressive. Cornelius, I mean, I know a bit about your background. We already talked before, and I know you have tons of crazy, cool, interesting story and impressive stories. And I mean, the pickup story I didn't know was there yet. Later on, you moved on to Uber, actually. If there's anything from the Lazada time which you feel like is worth sharing, any story or anything profound, feel free to share it. But then maybe bring us along your Uber time and what you did over there. I think there was also, let's say, fast learning curve that you experienced there, a lot that you've experienced across continents. Really, really impressive. Maybe bring us along how you moved on to Uber and what really stuck from that time.
Yeah. So I think the bridge is going to be interesting because there's an actual learning. So basically what happened there, the Rocket bosses from Europe constantly gave us new tasks to do. Like each month there was a new focus. Like this month, more orders, next month, more revenue, next month, more margin. And it was an utter shit show to do this every month differently. And basically a big issue we discovered at some point that our retention is very bad. And I read this book when it came out right at that year, just like the Everything store about Amazon. So I read the book and it explained that they had so much trust issues that once they were able to promise next day delivery, everything changed. Because people were able to just trust it and get their shit the next day. And so when I started with this, we had like half of our orders were canceled and the average delivery time was 2 weeks. You order something 2 weeks later, you get it. Not a great customer experience. We had like a customer service team that was bigger than our whole warehouse because we got so many complaints. So we were able to, with my bosses and obviously my work and some other people, but our whole project was to get this, anything that gets ordered that day gets shipped that day. And based on that, on that kind of, with that as a North Star, we subjected the whole company to that goal. And that is something that I now realize how incredibly important it is, because it gave the whole company one objective. And it was like, we need to ship this shit the same day. That means we can only promote things on Facebook that we have in stock, like stuff like this. So I built a crazy Excel sheet basically to manage all this information. I had to run it twice a day, which was a nightmare. But that got us from no deliveries at all the next day to being the best in the whole of all the Rocket Internet ventures, which were like, 50 at that time globally. A lot of them much more mature than us. And that's what got me to Uber, because some people noticed, what the fuck is Thailand doing that they're so good at this? They must be cheating. But we just were able to, just run extremely hard, tight operation and processes on getting this done. And then someone poached me to come to Uber, who joined from Rocket Internet to Uber and was like, well, I need this fucking guy, and can he please come to Germany and work for us, despite not having a bachelor's degree at this point in time. So that's how I got to Uber. Yeah. So what I learned from that for unicorns is that, and the Uber has much more on that, but the ability to focus your whole operation on a certain thing is just the most important thing. Like, because if everyone does some random shit, you're not going to move fast. You're not going to be faster than the incumbents. That's what makes incumbents slow, because everyone does something. But unicorns, everyone is like, pulling on one string together. ziehen an einem Strang. Shitty translation. But everyone works towards this goal. And that's what I learned, and the power of that, and what you can do in what amount of time if everyone focuses on the same thing.
Okay. So that was the main learning from your time at Lazada, and then Uber became aware of what you were doing back there, and you were still quite young at this stage, right? And then you moved on to Uber, started out in Germany.
Yeah.
But you also had your experiences in Africa and also in Russia. Really profound experiences. That would probably, you could cover a podcast only about each of these stations. But maybe bring us along your time at Uber and what were the lessons there, and how it went on. The story. I'll be wondering.
It was quite humbling, honestly, because after, like at Rocket, I was running quite significant operations. Huge P&L, not P&L responsibility, but what went through the warehouse were millions of dollars a month. And then I went to Uber, and I thought, now I'm joining like a real company, not a shit show like Rocket. And because they just raised, $200 million from Google, which was back then like the biggest funding round ever, I think, or one of the top 5 funding rounds in the history of startup fundings. And I came there, and we were in the shitty office in this rundown office building that was supposed to be torn down, and they just gave me a laptop from the guy they just fired as I went into the door. They literally fired the guy and gave me his laptop and his phone, and like, yo, there's a link to all the drivers who are like limousine drivers in the airport. Call them all and make sure they drive for us. I was like, what the fuck is this? I thought I'm gonna running the city operations. They were like, well, there's no city operations. You need to like get some drivers first. So that was quite humbling. And then I was just basically taxi driver's bitch for a year or two. And just like hundreds of taxi drivers had my phone number, or then Uber drivers at some point, they became Uber drivers. And like really hardcore grinding city operations. But the focus there too, at some point, Uber, we realized that all we need to do is get more cars on the road. Like if we do that, everything else is solved. And it took us years to really get a full understanding of this. But then Uber had literally, the whole of Uber's strategy internally was more cars, 2 words. And if you're in a meeting and you don't talk about how you get more cars, someone will tell you, shut the fuck up. Think about how to get more cars. How is this helping us to get more cars? And that was just extremely helpful for me to see this extreme clarity of focus and how important that is to actually scale this fast. Because you cannot grow 10x a year if you do 10 different things. You can only grow if you just do one thing with all your power and all your people, and you measure it every fucking day. Like we measured everything every day. So you can improve every day. So I was
with
so
the
happy.
TVs.
With the TVs.
In the office.
Oh yeah, on that post about the TVs, TVs make unicorns, and without TVs, no unicorn. But honestly, like when I look at my clients who became unicorns, you literally go into the office and there's no TVs. I'm like, fuck, this is not going to be a good one. It's really, because it's just so humbling and honest when you look at non-cumulative data. Non-cumulative data, very important. Otherwise, you're lying to yourself. Every day. And you see what is going on every day. And you can track it every day. And you can make improvements every day. That's how you grow every day. It's like if you're training and you measure your weight every year, how is that going to do? If you measure it every day, you're probably going to make some changes sometimes. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll be wondering, before moving on, I think you already alluded to a lot of things that you're doing currently with your clients through your coaching practice. And I'll be definitely wondering what you would advise, let's say, founders, operators in this space, how to scale. But before that, I know that you have 1 or 2 more interesting anecdotes. And I'll be wondering if you could share interesting anecdotes from Africa, from Russia. I have to admit, I listened to another podcast, but that was really some impressive stories that you were sharing there. Could you share with us briefly those stories and share with us what you did there? And if you would go back, let's put it this way.
I would always go back. Like, okay. I would go back in time and do the same thing again. I would not want to go do the same thing again right now, but I would go back in time. So I think one thing about data is dangerous. I once at Lazada got fired because I did an analysis on, basically the goal was to reduce our shipping costs and to increase profitability after including the shipping costs. So we walked through a P&L and it was like GM2, GM3, whatever different steps of how you can measure your profitability. And first it was only about gross margins, and that was gross margins plus shipping cost. And then I ran and analyzed the data and just added margin plus shipping costs. Very simple. And I found out that one of our verticals which was like furniture and large appliances, was very good on the gross margin, but horrendous including shipping because we had free shipping. So we had all these people who live on crazy islands in Thailand. Like we furnished whole hotels in islands in Thailand with free shipping. So we would send them a fridge to an island for free, which obviously kills your margin. You lose so much money on it. So I presented analysis, and then the recommendation was to shut down this whole vertical, basically, or like we need to reduce it by 90%. And then the guy who ran this vertical was one of the 5 founders. He threw something at me in the office and fired me, and had a huge meltdown. Yeah, so that's when it's first time I realized that like data is very good because it brings out truth, but often it also brings out a lot of pain in people because it just calls out bullshit that is happening and someone is emotionally attached to it. So that's when I got fired the first time at Lazada. Another time I got fired nearly at Uber was when we got a new program, and I emailed the Salesforce CEO directly and told him that this new program, Exact Target, has the shittiest usability ever, and that it's such a pain. I was drunk when I wrote this email, obviously. And that nearly got me fired from Uber, because apparently it's not okay as an Uber employee to write the CEO of Salesforce, Mark Benioff, an angry drunk email about how shitty his product is. It's apparently not okay to do, what I learned. Yeah, I don't know what to take from that, but do not write emails when you're drunk to very important people. Another learning. And if you do data that's very harmful to people, and you have some data that will piss some people off, present the data and let them make the conclusion, and not shove the conclusion to everyone's face, because then you're the asshole. Which is something I did multiple times, so I learned that in many ways.
Was it something you did wrong also during your times in Africa or Russia, where you ran into that mistake again? Sorry?
Yeah, because I was usually a lot more data driven than other people. Because at Rock 2, we were tracking data all the time, and nobody tracks data that aggressively as me somehow. And so I would just constantly piss off everyone by making a data analyst, telling them everything they're doing is shit, and telling them what they should be doing. As like a not that senior employee, I would like write the regional general manager of America that 5 of his cities are run like garbage, and this is how he should fix them. And he's like, who this fucking guy from Germany telling me how to run my cities? So I did that all over the world, like from Southeast Asia. I just picked the biggest cities in the world and told the boss of who runs these cities that their cities are run shit. And here's the data proof that they run shit, and this is how to fix it. But also that got me again to Russia, because it started a mutiny in Africa when I was in Africa, and they didn't want to cut the prices, which by the way led to that's a painful story. Actually, good story. So I was sent to Africa to help them with pricing. We did a price cut, and because they had a huge wait list, which never existed at Uber, because they just didn't have the balls to cut the prices. So we did the price cut, and then they rolled back the price cut. Because the price cut was so bad, we were under police protection. That's the hand grenade story came from, where the guys who were protecting us carried hand grenades in the office with us to protect us from our own drivers. And then they were still dumb enough to roll it back. And then the competitor, Bolt, which back then was tiny in Estonia, somehow stumbled through the story that there was this carnage about price cuts, and then it was rolled back, sent a single guy to South Africa. And within 3 months, South Africa was half the whole business of Bolt. And thanks to that, Bolt is the biggest global competitor of Uber.
Huh, okay.
And I was meeting the Bolt CEO. We were skiing, and we're sitting in the ski lift together, and we're chatting about like war stories. And he's, oh yeah, you were in South Africa too. By the way, thank you. That made our whole fucking business. That's because it literally like 10x their business in 2 years that they went to, or in a year to go to Africa, and they could raise funding off that and all that stuff and compete with Uber globally. Yeah, so that was a bit of a for me. Yeah.
And how did it lead you to Russia? Because you just mentioned earlier that your time in Africa paved the way for your Russia experience.
Yeah, because I got much more responsibility for P&Ls and for managing cities, and I just managed cities super well. And one of I just understood pricing extremely well and incentives, and turned out that these are literally the most relevant things at Uber. Everything else is somewhat important, but if you fuck these two up, everything else doesn't matter. And I got super lucky that I did the biggest price increase in the history of Uber. I had to get Travis sign off, like Uber's founder, to sign off on it. And it led to 40 straight weeks of growth and made that city bigger than, it was Accra, and it got bigger than Lagos, which is 10 times the size and much older. And then the EMEA people, the head of EMEA saw that, and then he thought, hey, can you just do your analysis on Russia? So we see what would be interesting in Russia. So I did that, and they're like, okay, cool. Why don't you just go there and do it? And so that's how they sent me to Russia. But I realized also that I want a job, and I didn't want that job in Russia because life in Cape Town is a lot fucking nicer than in Russia. But if you want the job, it's helpful to do the shit before someone asks you to do it. For anyone who's listening, who wants a promotion, who wants a client, whatever, like the most times I've seen this work with go-to-market for my clients or with people looking for better jobs, you just do the shit that people who are supposed to do that job need to be doing. You just do that first. There was also always the kind of the story at Uber. It's like, if you want to become a GM, you have to perform like a GM, do the shit that GM does, and then you become a GM, not the other way around. Like, you show that you can do the job, then you get the title. But you do the job first, then you get the title. And that was always very empowering for me because it just gave me a carte blanche to just go crazy and do all kind of shit I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, you went to Uber Russia very briefly. You were basically running Uber. You were also part of this big merger there at Yandex.
Just to be clear, because I want to be very clear on this, I don't want to put in the word that I was running Uber Russia, because there was a GM of Uber Russia, and he was a GM of it, and I was running the P&L. Somehow I got the goal to do the P&L, so I was managing all the money, all the incentives, and with that, the P&L. And he did like the people management, because I should not want to have me as 27-year-old manage 100 people in Russia who are all 10 years older than me. But in terms of the aggression in the business and that part, that's what I was doing. I was running an over $100 million a year P&L. Like, it was absolutely crazy to be like, every week we would make decisions how much money we're giving to 60,000 drivers. And like, that as a 27-year-old was just amazing to have that much power and money flowing through your hands, like millions of dollars each week that we would distribute to all these drivers to get them to do what we wanted them to do, and making it profitable. And 6 months later, that was just such a crazy, quick, like, ride of experiences. Yeah, that was really cool. Very grateful that they handed that ridiculous responsibility and power to me at that age.
Mm-hmm. And I'll be wondering, how did because after Russia, your time at Uber came to an end. How did your time at Uber, particularly Uber Russia, maybe pave the way to what you're doing now and to your project afterwards? Because now you're back in Thailand, you live there full time, you're doing now other things. Maybe bring us along how the transition went from being this young 27-year-old operator in Russia for this big tech company, Uber, really having tons of responsibility, living the dream in a sense, climbing this ladder, really performing at a high level, to where you are right now, being, coaching and also being in Thailand. What made that transition happen ultimately?
I think, first of all, I left Uber because I was fully vested and or nearly fully vested, and I was long distance with my wife. And the only other option at Uber was to go to Pakistan. And my wife was like, "Fuck no, we're not going to Pakistan." And we got married. We got married, and this whole point, like, once I'm vested and done with all my shenanigans in Russia and in South Africa, then we'll finally settle somewhere and live together and not just be constantly long distance. And because she was also, she's a high performing consultant, so she was also working. And so the first thing it paved my way is that I got a lot of money, because I was able to, there was a secondary share sale to SoftBank at that point in time, and then later the IPO. So I was financially extremely independent very quickly. So that paved the way to all these angel investments, because now I was flush with money and thought I understand angel investing, which I didn't fucking do at this point. And so that was first part of it. And I just saw how a $1 billion company that deals with physical things, despite it's not of manufacturing, but you still need to, like, every Uber trip is a transaction between two people that are sitting in a car, they're driving around the city, there's like cars involved, there's people involved, there's some shit happening, right? And I think it really helped me understand what it takes to actually build a unicorn or more. And that is just like, it's just a lot of fucking work. That's a big learning from that. And it paved the way. I had now a lot of money. I was 100 kilo, smoked like half a pack of cigarettes a day, and drank 5 beers to just keep my shit somewhat together or not. And then very shortly after, I was at a medtech startup for a bit, and I realized I need to fucking rest. I didn't realize that I had a slip disc, and they want to operate my neck. And I was like, fuck, I'm an idiot. I have so much money in my bank account. I still grind like an idiot, and my body is just not having it anymore. So I can either get an operation and continue doing this, or I should try to be well and and do some yoga meditation, figure it out. So I took a sabbatical basically, and then started coaching with my first client was Entrepreneur of the Year, EY Entrepreneur of the Year. And I started coaching, and then he got us to start a company together. And so I got into this whole starting own companies and coaching stuff.
Mhm. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, you already mentioned it. You started becoming or be well, focusing on the be well element.
Very smooth transition.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'll be wondering because that's something we were also connecting about. Is I mean, I'm also very much interested in the wellness space. I mean, very much different from your journey, but obviously the wellness space or well-being space, well-being aspect does play a role nowadays in your life. Maybe you're also working with tons of founders right now as your clients, and you're coaching them. Maybe when you look at founders you work with now and you've witnessed over the years through your investments, what are maybe the signs that someone is performing, sustainably well versus, just running on maybe, borrowed time and it's just a question of time that this person's not going to do it for the long run?
I mean, honestly, I speak with all my founders and I know very well their their daily schedule. Like with all my clients, I know their daily schedule. So I have a very good grasp of how they're doing and how balanced they are, right? But also, I mean, there is a time and place for everything. My meditation teacher always says, not always, but tells me at least a lot, everything with moderation, including moderation. And the reality of things is that if you want to build if you have that drive for whatever reason you have, or the calling, sometimes it's an ego drive, sometimes it's a real calling, whatever it is that kind of propels you to strive for great things, it just might sometimes be necessary to go a bit hard and take up some credit against your body. Like, if you're about to close a fat fundraising round or whatnot, then you cannot just drop the pen at 5 and go home. Like, it's just not how it can work. But I do think what is really important is to do some sort of physical things, some sort of well-being things. So with my founders, now with just a conversation with one of my clients very recently, and we looked through her schedule again, and it was like, she works way too fucking much. She's super, super strong, but she just works too much. Like, the marginal benefit of kind of working 14 hours or 15 hours a day is negligible. But if you use that 1 hour, or maybe even go down to 13 hours or to 10, 10 will be enough too, but use that time for yourself to do yoga, to do stretches, to exercise, to just meet friends and open up your mind a bit, or go hiking or do something else, it most likely yields better business results. Because business, I think if you're not worked out crazy person, then you can maybe build a successful business, but it will not last long. You might not be able to exit it. And you're probably going to bring some dumb shit into the world. So I'm working with my founders a lot on all kinds of these things. I say, hey, get a massage, bro. You get such a good salary, or your company should pay for your massage. This is important that you're feeling well. Get a fucking therapist to come to your office and give you a back massage, whatever it is. Like, depending on the situation of the company, right? But really take care of yourself, and don't be shy to spend money on taking care of yourself. Get a fucking therapist. Like, every founder, I think, should get a therapist. Like, this is I rarely see, and I would be like, yo, we invest in you if you guys get a therapist. Like, that is just such a massive lever in terms of not making dumb shit.
I mean, I already told you, really talked a lot about it. Something that fascinates me is all these athletes, right? What kind of support system they have. And I'm not sure to what extent founders really have that support system.
I absolutely agree. Like, a guy who's like a fucking backbencher at a football team and makes like $1 million a year. He's like the 17th guy at whatever Bielefeld. He has a way crazier support system holistically, in terms of food, in terms of like mental well-being, in terms of whatever it is, than some guy running $1 billion company. It's ridiculous. There's so much leverage to that. And it costs next to nothing compared to thing. But the thing is, like, nobody thinks about this. Very few people have that. Like, very few investors care anything about their companies or the well-being of their founders. They don't really understand these things too much either, most likely, because they haven't often been through it. Some have, it's amazing, but most just, it's not on their radar. They need to get new clients and make new investments and make new LP stuff, right? It's not really that they have time to think about the well-being of their medium performing portfolio companies. There's no time for that. So there's nobody who thinks about this for the founders.
I'm very curious, Cornelius, because you mentioned you already were into yoga when you were in your teens, and later on you got into this high-performing operator role career. But were you conscious about the trade-off you were making back then, actually? Just out of curiosity, or were you starting to neglect? Sorry?
No fucking way.
No fucking way, okay.
No, I was so obsessed, man. It's like, I was like on a warpath. And I just wanted to make Uber as successful as possible. And I just did whatever I could and totally neglected everything around me for that. Like my body, my relationship with my wife. Thank God she didn't run away. My friends, my family. Like it was times where I wouldn't speak with my dad for like half a year, probably. Like I was just absolutely obsessed with doing this thing. And I was not thinking about the consequences or the trade-off.
Let's move on maybe to your current coaching practice, Scaling Brilliance. I'll be wondering now, you've had a big operating or career in the operating space. From your view, what do you think do the best operators have in common? Maybe beyond the obvious things like maybe, need to be, let's say, a bit intelligent, I guess, have a strong work ethic.
Not too intelligent. Not too intelligent. And that's what, like a lot of, that's what makes hardware so interesting for me, because I've now worked with tons of PhD founders who like brilliant scientists who are inventing this like literally civilization changing or improving technologies. And you need that insane high IQ and depth and a certain knowledge to come up with these things. But then to scale a business and run an operation of dozens or hundreds of people, you need a totally different personality, basically, and skill set. Because you need to make a lot of imperfect decisions very quickly. And you need to just mercilessly ship shit. And that is very different than working in academia. And, getting a PhD, you need to, manage some politics, you need to be good with your prof. And it's just a totally different vibe of operation. You often work in groups to a little bit together. You do papers together, versus now you're alone running this fucking thing. All the burden is on you. So yeah, what makes it a good operator, I think, is people who have, to a certain degree, not too much intelligence. I would say IQ from 120 to 130 is probably the ideal amount for an amazing operator. Maybe 140, but not more than that. Then because you just think too much. You overthink shit too much.
But that's already over average, huh?
Well, that's already way over average, but we're talking about
exactly.
Build unicorns are usually crazy smart, right? There's no many people with an IQ of 90 building any unicorns. It's just, I would say for hardware tech, because you're talking about people who create IP. These are the smartest people in the world. So I really think for them to what you need, someone who can just ship shit every day and has practice with shipping shit every day, and who does not mind telling people to improve. That's often the biggest challenge I see with very technical founders, because they're just not used to holding people up to standards. That's what makes a good operator. A good operator checks in on shit every 3 hours. He's somewhat of a micromanager, usually, or she is somewhat of a micromanager. She goes deep into data, and she's just mercilessly pushing her people to perform more.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that makes a good operator is read a fucking biography of a great operator. All the operators that I know that are good operators read biographies of great operators and learned from great operators. And all the people who are shitty operators have never bothered to learn that skill.
Maybe share with us, what is maybe something you see among your clients or deep tech founders that they get wrong maybe at the early stage? I mean, they have raised some money, they have some kind of traction. What do they get wrong most of the times? What do you think is a common mistake early on?
I would say the most common break point in my investments and my clients, but with my clients, they hired me at least so I can help them navigate the situation. But it's usually they have a working prototype, maybe 5 to 7 or 10 test customers, something like that. And to go from there to actually running like a proper operation, or being wise enough to see maybe that's not my kind of thing. I'm going to sell the IP and make like a $50 to $100 million exit. But a lot of them choose neither. And then they die in the middle, because it's just such a different requirement to really do go-to-market and run an operation. And often what I hear the most, like I think the most red flag for me is when a technical founder who just raised 5 million says, now we just have to sell it. And because selling it is a whole new game and no fucking easy situation in most ways. And then you usually have to sell it a bunch of times, redo their product, adjust a little bit more, totally change the behavior of the organization, that they're now not a research lab anymore, but a tightly run operation that manufactures shit. Like it's a totally different business that they have to transform themselves into. And that's where most fail. And the hardware startups that actually scale were the ones that they brought on seasoned operators. They had the humility to bring in seasoned operators, not just hire more engineers, but people who've actually scaled some operation and then changed their culture tremendously. And they had to let go usually of some kind of people because it's not a research lab anymore. It's a high performance operation situation.
Mm-hmm. Maybe very briefly, Cornelius, because we're almost coming to an end already, but you mentioned it after your Uber time, you earned a decent amount of money, and you've also been involved then in angel investments, and you've done and backed companies yourself. What were here, major learnings that you would share with the audience? Anything maybe addressed to early stage founders, or maybe other people who would love to do angel investing but maybe are not aware of the challenges involved with that? What is something you've learned and would like to share with everybody here?
Like most angel investors are gonna be very unlucky. Like my big learning was, and I got very, very fucking lucky because I was able to spread my risks very well. But if you want good returns, like if you're doing it for the money, don't do fucking angel investing. Like angel investing on the average return of someone who's a first-time angel investor, even though they're like a famous founder or whatnot, doesn't fucking matter because you're a newbie in this game and we're all newbies in a new game. And we are the exit liquidity. Like any deal that comes to me as a freshly minted, semi-rich person who would do angel investing because I exited a business, or what a founder did a secondary, I am the exit liquidity. Like any fucking good deal would not come my way because it would have been gone by someone who actually knows what the fuck they're doing. So I think that is the main learning. I really, for like a personal recommendation to all founders listening to this, and I just had that case with a friend of mine whose business went through some crazy shit, went bankrupt, and he didn't take out any money. Another guy I know, he works as an employee at some random company, and he now has 12 apartments. And he's fucking minted. He doesn't need to worry about anything in his whole life ever again. And so I really implore all my clients, while you're founder involved, buy some fucking real estate and rent it out. Like that is by far the easiest thing you can do because you have a good income and you can usually handle that additional operation load of doing it. If you're doing it smart, is not much, but you're setting yourself up for life and you're making yourself very much differently independent. So I highly recommend real estate investments to all my clients, and getting cash out as much as you can. Because it's way too risky of a situation and you make better decisions if you're not in survival mode, in my experience. So I always try to get my clients to get secondaries whenever they can, like always get a secondary when you raise a round of funding, and then keep cash money in your bank account. Like you go into your bank account and you look at every day and there's like at least 1 year of expenses if you can get to it. Because if it has nearly nothing all the time, you're always running in survival mode and you're just going to make a lot more short-term dumb decisions.
You're right. Hey, I think the survival element can be really dangerous.
Like you're not yourself when you're hungry. Kind of Snickers ad.
Yeah.
Like it's like this. And most founders are just very hungry and then they make a lot of dumb decisions sometimes. So yeah, do a secondary if you can. Put some cash in your bank account, buy real estate, like the conservative shit. You're already making your income in the craziest, risky, like focused way. So might as well spend it or invest it in the most boring, predictable way. Just buy gold, do anything that is not return driven, which is very hard for founders.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I think that's a piece of advice that a lot of people maybe in the ecosystem wouldn't give, right? But which is also,
it's because honestly, like what happens is I see that with all my founders who exited, they like get into you want to up level into a whole higher social status in a sense. You get into these angel groups of guys who've done 100 investments, who are billionaires, who like all these fucking much richer people to you. And what does it tell you? You just exited your business. You're top of your class. You're the smartest motherfucker in your village, whatever. You're the richest guy at young age. But now you're going into a much higher league of rich people who are often more confused than you, and now you feel like shit again. So you're feeling miserable again because these guys, the guy did a 100K ticket, but I can only do a 30K ticket. Fuck, I'm such a loser. Like, you're in that same rat race again if you do angel investing. Whereas if you buy apartments, you're now the landlord. It's a different psychological feeling.
True. It's very true. Cornelius, we're almost done. Maybe one quick final question. What's maybe one misconception that outsiders often have about maybe your path, about what you're doing? Anything you would like to share, which you feel like, hey, people maybe oftentimes misunderstand it?
I do think people, and maybe not just in my path specifically, but looking at startups and unicorns, and startup success, I think a lot of unsuccessful people attribute a lot of luck to things, and they do not see what a ridiculous amount of suffering and pain is usually required to build something successful. It's like building a cathedral or like a pyramid, right? If a unicorn is like a massive pyramid, and you notice it's like 1 million bricks that you need to lift up that shit. And people are like, oh, it looks easy. No, it's fucking massive. And if you want to build $100 million company, it's a lot less smaller pyramid. If you want to build $100 billion company, it's a lot bigger pyramid. It's just a lot of labor and energy and pain that has to go into this. And it's not for a lot of people. And a lot of people are much better off, especially with the technical, just build something, exit it at 20 million, and you're good, or just do something chill and have a nice life. It's not necessary to be crazy successful. You can have a nice life. The happiest people are usually not the richest. Maybe
Absolutely.
One last thing, and that's a bit contrary to my work because I help people become unicorns. And my role model was always my grandpa. It was always billionaires like Bill Gates or whatever, who's like the richest guy in the world. And now it really shifted, and my role model is my grandpa. He died peacefully at age 98. He did his taxes at age 98 in an 80-year-old typewriter himself still, because he's mentally fully there. And then he died half a year later or so with holding his wife's hand just from old age. Holding my hand, holding his wife's hand. I'm just obviously his only grandchild. He loves me. And I was like, holy shit, there's much better success than like Steve Jobs, who built all this shit that we have to deal with, and who died miserably at age 55. I'd rather die like my grandpa than like Steve Jobs.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing that, Cornelius, that personal note. And thank you very much for your time, Cornelius. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It was really amazing, and I think we could have continued talking for hours. And I think you could actually do a podcast with like different episodes about each chapter in your life, I think.
I want to give value to people. So one thing for everyone who's a founder, I think there's 2 questions that are really helpful for having your business. Founders would normally listen to this, hopefully to either be entertained, but most likely to get some kind of a knowledge for themselves. So if there's one thing that I would recommend is ask yourself, what is the main fucking thing you need to do in your business? Like at Uber was more cars. What is that for your business? Then ask that same thing, your top 5 people in your business, and see how many different answers you get. And then work your ass off to hammer this thing. What is it that you need to do? More cars, whatever it is, whatever, more page views, whatever the main thing is that you need to do, higher LTV, hammer it into the heads of your people every fucking day. Otherwise, they will all do random shit. That is really important. And on the business side, on the personal side, ask yourself, what are you running away from? By the thing you're doing. What are you afraid of, basically? I think that's very, 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 very helpful to understand yourself and see what drives your behavior, actually.
Absolutely. Makes me think myself here. Cornelius, thank you very much. And hope to see you soon. Maybe give an update sometime.
Yes. I have many good ideas for you, man. Maybe not good ideas, but a bunch of ideas at least. That might be interesting.
We'll see.
You're doing something so amazing.
Thanks, Cornelius.
Thank you for having me, man. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks.
And have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.